Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, welcome to the Win with Dice podcast. Calvin already said it's a podcast all about tabletop RPGs, right?
I did not. I actually almost said, and this week is special guest, because I was so used to introducing guests.
Oh we should redo the intro, but never mind.
No,
anyway, guys, this is the Win with Dice podcast. Podcast all about tabletop RPGs, running them, playing them. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach, as you can tell by the intro, to, doing a lot of things in life, but also, running these games and playing in them. So we just like to share our stories about the things that we've experienced. And so, you can see that this hobby is really fun, and maybe you want to try out GMing for the first time. That's kind of the goal. We're just trying to propagate a bunch of new GMs. That's what we do.
Yeah. Basically, to make GMing not seem like this very difficult or impossible thing, we just kind of mess around and we manage to have fun with it. So you can too.
Yeah, awesome.
It's still work, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
So this week we're probably going to chat a whole lot of Lancer stuff. I'm running a one-shot in the future, so we might talk a bit about that and some of the characters I made up for it, as well as trying to get people into a new system, which is something that I have to work on for running this game, and then I'll talk more about it and when it's going to happen and all that kind of stuff. By the time this episode is out, it will have been officially announced, so I can talk about it a bit early, because you're not going to hear this until the day.
Oh, cool. Wow, look at that timing. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
well, yes. But before all that,
we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
All right, yes, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, stolen from Calvin and brought to you by Ramon. Once again, I am Mr. Crime, criming up the place, stealing all of the ideas. If you don't know that reference, watch her. I think it was
watch the episode with Alex. Maybe Alex, Mr. Crime will listen from over your shoulder and give you bad ideas.
Oh my god, the character's so good. Just totally stolen. Public domain, come at me, bro. Yeah, so the weekly GM tip of the week is going to be I stole it from Calvin. Obviously, Calvin's talking about onboarding some new players to Lancer, which is like a totally different system from what they've been playing typically. So it's like that's the thing. It's like to do onboard your players, you kind of have to do a little write-up, possibly create a couple characters, pre-build all these characters for them. So it's just reducing the barrier of entry for those players to be like, oh, I get what's going on. Oh, I have an idea. Even if your player decides to make their own character, at least like having like a level 1 or whatever the base character already done is, so you can show them an example of like, this is why I chose this, or this is why this interaction works. It's really, really helpful. I think it's like probably one of the best ways to show a player how the game is actually run, because you can like have like actual examples. So you can make a whole bunch of them and just keep them like on hand for when you're running games for new players. You can just be like, okay, yeah. Or a new person, someone wants to bring somebody into a already running game, just be like, oh, no problem. Just choose one of these guys and we can work with it for the first session, and then maybe we can make some changes later, if you don't like it, that kind of deal.
Yeah, like you're not going to run out of use for that kind of thing if you make a good amount of them. I think we might have talked about something similar to this before, but I think it's important to just note, for people who might want to run something different than what's going on in their space, if they want to do a different game, if they want to try something new, it helps you to learn the system. It certainly helped me, especially running my builds by you. I got a better sense of like, oh, here's some things that work better together. Here's some things I might have missed. It just helps you to know the game system more, and it'll help you to give players information. One thing that I was trying with these pre-made characters is I made some notes on like not necessarily tactics, but just like, here's some interesting things this character has that makes them unique and ways you might be able to use them in combat. And it doesn't cover everything that they can do, just because that would be super extensive for a lot of the characters. But it does make note of certain things to try to communicate, here's what the personality of this character is and how they function. Yeah.
Especially like in Lancer, where like you're playing your pilot and you're actually playing your pilot in the mech, right? So it's like, these are what the mech can, this is like the capabilities of the mech, and like this is like the backstory of your pilot and their general attitude towards stuff kind of deal, right? So yeah, I think it's good. So yeah, that's your tip of the week, folks. Just make a bunch of pre-gen characters so you can onboard your players easier and have like a concrete example of like, this is why you choose this because this is how the rule interaction works kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
I think it also helps GMs kind of, especially if they're new GMs as well, to try and like, you know, figure out the rule set a little bit better, get a little bit more comfortable with those terminologies that like the players are going to be using because they're going to be using those characters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll actually work out. I think it will. All right, so let's get into today's episode. We're going to be chatting, again, like we said, we're going to be chatting a whole lot of Lancer. I guess we can get into getting people into a game. And this might be more of a system agnostic kind of thing because it sort of applies to whatever new game you want to run. But that is something that I've been trying to consider because I want to make something for the players I can put in front of them to sort of explain stuff in the game before we get into it. So I'm not just throwing everything to them all at once. At the same time, like I don't want to overload them with information. Because it was something that I had to deal with earlier when I was doing like ship combat and Starfinder. And what I ended up doing there was I just kind of threw everything at the players all at once. And then I whittled it down, like, let's figure out what your character does, and then you can just go to that specific part in the notes, and that's all you need to know. But here's everything all at once. And it worked out. So I was wondering, like, how do I do that for Lancer? Because Lancer isn't the same. Like with the ship combat, right? Like you have specific roles. You're your captain, your pilot, your gunner, whatever, and they do specific things. But Lancer is like, I don't know. Do I explain everything down to the details of like all the moves and attacks and everything? Or do I just say you have this many actions per turn, we'll figure everything else out as we go?
I mean, yeah, I think like Lancer, because it runs the line of like, you have to kind of explain what the action economy is a little bit to players, I think. And like, you know, what constitutes an attack, right? Like what are the different kinds of attacks? Because that's kind of where like the abilities kind of break down, I guess. Like I think like the cross interactions is like, okay, this is a ranged attack, and then you know you have a system or an ability that affects range attacks. So at least like getting them used to that kind of terminology, right? Like I know we were like as we were going through this because I helped Calvin out a little bit, kind of I guess double checking like, you know, if the choices kind of made sense. But you know, some abilities like, you know, we like just saying like, you know, the grapple action and the ram action are both melee attacks, right? So it's just like, you know, what would that mean in terms of interaction? Like just kind of understanding that. And like, you know, like the action of barrage means that you just like, you know, fire two weapons, if I remember correctly. It's been like crazy long since I ran Lancer.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be like my first time. Like I'm hoping my first time isn't gonna be on stream. That's probably gonna be what ends up happening.
Shit.
I will totally pancake. But yeah, like I'm just wondering, like, I mean, without getting into rule specifics, what I'm wondering is, what do you think would be important to know? Like, you mentioned the action economy, so like, what players can do on their turns in combat. You would say that's something very important.
Yeah. Like, what are their options, right? It's like, you know, like moving, like how, like movement, it's its own separate thing, right? Like the idea of like, you know, you have, I mean, I think it's similar to, it's almost similar to like to Pathfinder, where it's like you have 3 actions, but you have 2 actions and a movement. And then, you know, like maybe having like a list. Obviously, I think Lancer has like a shorthand list in the rule book where it's like, these are all the actions that you can take, right? And, you know, but generally it's like, yeah, I think the action economy is like a good place to start, as well as like, you know, understanding, like I know you put in the blurb of like what all these mechs and stuff, what kind of like their abilities, right? But like kind of like you could explain to your players a little bit, being like, well, you kind of want like a mix of everything, right? Like different kinds of mechs, like different archetypes of mechs, like, you know, artillery, controller, defender, like not like you could still run Lancer with like all defenders or something like that, right? But just kind of like those ideas, it's like, if you're playing like an artillery mech, or you're playing like the controller mech, it's like it's better for you to like focus in on doing the thing that you're good at a little bit in Lancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is something I don't think I had mentioned specifically, like what roles these mechs might fall into. I just made the builds. I think some of them are very obviously like support types, and some of them are very obviously like control types with the way how they interact with things. But I guess I didn't really put that information like player facing. I'm more focused on like, here's what this thing does, and I guess maybe let them interpret how that works for them. Maybe that's something I can put in, because I did specifically say to the players at the time, like, here's a list of pre-gen characters, and you can make your own if you want. And then I just made sure to mention, like, everybody just picked, like, a couple, like 2 or 3 or whatever, just in case so there's no overlap or anything. Which so far there hasn't been, which is pretty good. But yeah, I didn't really specify, like, what sort of roles they fit in. So maybe that's something I can put in. Just make a note of that and let players know that, hey, I updated these pre-gen characters with like what roles they might fall into, in case that's something you care about.
Yeah, you could even add like, at the top or at the bottom, like this, like I think there is like an explanation of like what they kind of means, like what it means to be a controller. I don't remember. I don't have the book in front of me right now.
No, I'm sure it's in there. I haven't memorized that, so, but I'm sure it's in there.
Yeah, but in general, like I think for any system, it's always kind of like, especially if there's like roles, it's like kind of explaining what the roles mean. I mean, obviously you can do whatever you want while the game is going and play the character you want to play, but it's like, if you're playing like a goblin, don't like be in front of somebody, you're gonna get smacked. Right, that kind of deal. Maybe just like, telling like players like, what are the weaknesses of this mech, because weaknesses are also a thing too, right? Like, you don't really want to be hacked by like, while you're piloting a Blackbeard, because their heat cap sucks or whatever, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I lean more into mentioning like the strengths. Maybe some of them I mentioned, like, oh, this thing's a bit slow, but it's real chunky, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think it also helps because you also like created actual with retrograde minis, like they're using their website to create the tokens or like the mech images to kind of showcase like, oh yeah, this guy looks like a real slow chunky boy. Like,
yes,
like, this person has like a bunch of laser swords like in an aggressive stance, so I probably should just go up and slash people.
That was something very important to me. I also, on Itch.io, I found like a bundle of sci-fi character portraits, which I don't know if maybe you had shown it to me before or I'd found it somewhere else. I think I got it from the Lancer Discord. And I just grabbed that and I was going through it and I was like, because I had ideas of what the characters looked like in my head, but then it's like, well, now I'm limited by the portraits I have here, and there's like a whole lot of them. There's like 100 of them, so it's not like I'm like lacking for options. It's just like, do I have something that is exactly like what I saw in my head? Not exactly, but here's one that's pretty close, and then maybe I change up some character details to fit that.
So I'm wondering, like, what was the first character you made? Like, was it from your experiences playing Lancer, or was it just like, oh yeah, I went to like, I just opened up all of the things and it was like, this is the first mech, yes, this is the one, right? Like,
so
I think it's B for Blackbeard. That's what it was.
Kind of.
That's how it's in the book.
It was a couple of different things. I guess I can get into. Maybe I'll post a link if people want to see it of what the pre-gen characters are. They're not super cool and interesting, but I guess because we're talking about it, you might want to see it. But the first one I made is one that was actually basically very similar to the character I had in our stream game. It was using the Blackbeard frame. It was doing grapple stuff. It had the axe and the shredding and everything. It was very straightforward, and that character's backstory was probably the most detailed one up front because that was the one that I knew the most about. Just because it was like, I'm basically recycling how my mech functions in that game with a different backstory.
Yeah.
So that was pretty easy to do. And then there are others that are like, there's the one that I used in Shaka's game that I took that, reworked it a bit. And then there's the one that was from our very first game, which I took, and that one's less similar, just because it's been a while, so I'm a bit more familiar with things. A bit.
Wait, which one was that one? What did we play in our very first game of Lancer?
Pretty sure. I don't know if I did play the Barbossa, but I played something big and slow that was more focused on shielding.
Oh, yes. Okay, I think it was the Drake you played, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact frame. I just remembered it was something big, slow, and I was dropping shields and stuff.
Yeah. By the way, if for the listeners, Calvin's made a bunch of license level 2 characters, just because like we're introducing the players to like, you know, the customization of mechs. I mean, like getting the actual frames. We wanted to explore like actually making a bunch of different frames and systems and stuff like that.
Yeah. So since that was my main focus, getting the characters like just high enough where you could have very different mechs. What I ended up doing is I had an idea of like some things I wanted to make, but I basically came into the I went into CompCon, obviously, and I was like, okay, I want to have a little bit of each of the core game manufacturers. I just focus on like just the core game stuff, and then I was like, I'm just gonna take 3 frames from each manufacturer and make a thing for that.
Oh, okay.
And that's basically what I did. So I started at each manufacturer. I looked at like what 3 frames stand out to me, what seemed very interesting, what I want to do something with. There are definitely some that were like, oh, I want to do something with this, but I can only pick 3. There were others that I wanted, but I tried to go with things that had sort of a unique look to them or a unique function to them, or I just thought looked cool, and I had a character idea right off the bat.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because like I guess I would assume that I would have done the opposite. I would have just made like every single available frame, make a character for that, and then figure out a backstory afterwards. And then probably tear my brain out. Like
yeah, that would be too much. Like that's why I said it's just going to be 3 from each, because that ended up being 12 characters, which is more than enough for a one shot with like 5 people, and you're in it too, but you're not picking one of these characters. So like I need like 4, right?
which is funny. I mean, you know, there may or may not be a Duke showing up. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, no, I might need some backup in that game. I have been spoiled in my Pathfinder game by having someone who knows the rules very well playing, so I need that for Lancer. But yeah, basically I just went through and I was like, okay, this frame looks cool, so let's do something with this. And then I tried to make a build, and then I came up with a character and a vague backstory. And then, because I do everything last minute, that's how my brain works, I guess. Like last week or so, I was in this mad scramble, putting everything together, trying to organize my notes so that they're like legible to people who aren't me. And I just had like ideas coming out, and I was like, okay, let me just keep writing out these bios and stuff, and hopefully they all turn out well. And for the most part, they did. It was honestly just like a last minute 11 p.m. to midnight to 1 a.m. panic of ideas. And then I came out and like sanded off the edges. Honestly, if I do post a link to this, people who are looking at it will see that it's like 90% JoJo references.
As you do.
Yeah, there's some fairly obvious ones. There's characters named like Trish and Bruno, and one of the mechs is called Il Vento d'Oro. Like, some of them are pretty obvious. Some of them are a bit more subtle. Like, Filthy Acts at a Reasonable Price is I mean, I'm sure people who know JoJo will get it, but it's kind of an obscure JoJo reference if you're not, I don't know.
It's not cool enough.
It's a Part 7 reference. So hopefully it's still interesting. It wasn't until like after I posted this and I was looking at it again and I was like, no one's gonna get why I called it that.
It's okay, that'll be your little secret.
Basically. Yeah, it's a bunch of JoJo stuff. There's an Evangelion reference in there somewhere.
That's impressive how much you hate that show.
You know what? It's because I named it before I finished Evangelion. And then I was actually gonna come up with another name for it, but then I was like, No, it's fine. I don't have the energy to come up with another JoJo name.
Was it Cruel Angel?
It was.
For the theme song?
It was.
Like, one of the only good things about Evangelion.
Yeah, no, I have a build in there that flies and shoots, like, rains down missiles. So I was like, okay, well, it's a Cruel Angel because it flies and then it hurts you.
Yes, perfect. Like, the show hurts you.
Oh, man. But yeah, so again, it's like I was just going through and I would see something that stands out to me and I would make something for that and I would come up with like a name, and mech name. I'd make that basic build. I think for the most part, those are what I had shown you before you had come in, like help me like figure out, well, here's how some things can work better together. Which also meant that I had to update the notes that I add, which are like, here's what this mech has, here's how you might be able to use it in combat, here's some ideas of what you can do with that. So some of them had to be updated because I changed like how it worked. Some characters' backstories had to be changed a bit because certainly one of them, the one that the Tokugawa one that's like really relies on like heat and stuff. It has nuclear cavalier, so it's like I'm gonna set myself on fire in order to set you on fire. I went back to the character's backstory a bit just to like emphasize that like, yeah, they're living on the edge. That's why their mech is like this.
They're hot-blooded.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, maybe we can like go on, like maybe we could just showcase like one of the characters that you created, whichever one you feel the most comfortable talking about.
Ooh, okay. Let's see, which one is very interesting here? I mean, I guess we could go with the one that I called Hellion. Because it's just very similar to the stream game character, without the backstory. Like, again, it's using a Blackbeard, it's a very grapple-based build. I think it might be pretty similar, if not completely similar, to what I was doing before. I think with just... I don't think I had Vanguard on the stream character, but maybe I did.
Yeah. Well, you could like go through like their backstory or whatever a little bit too, because that could also help out like the feel of the character. Give an example.
Sure. So for this, like some of the backstories I wanted to tie together a bit. Not so much so that they would like definitely be like, hey, it's you, that guy. But enough that there's like hints between some of the characters. Some of them have connections, some of them are completely independent. So when I was making this one, I wanted to create like a little space where I can maybe have other backstories. I don't think I ended up doing like again, it wasn't like super important that they all be tied to that, but just some of them might have it related to them. So essentially, this person comes from an artificial moon orbiting a planet, and after a regime change happened on that planet, they were sort of left like vulnerable. Just because society was having a smidge of a collapse. Not completely, just a bit of a coup was going on. So that kind of left these two artificial moons orbiting this planet as like vulnerable to like pirates and raiders and stuff like that. So we have this character here who helped defend her home from these attackers, which is where she got her nickname that became her call sign. And it's how she got her mech, Heracles Zero. Which, I don't know, I kind of wish I had made a JoJo reference now, looking back on it.
I mean, Heracles Zero is a pretty rad name for a mech.
It is. This was, because again, this was like the first one I made. So this was when I was like, okay, let's give these things actual names, not just like...
just JoJo references.
Yeah. So again, like it's a grappler with a bunch of really good weapons. It's very much based on, because I knew how my stream game character worked and I knew what was effective with it. I knew the way it worked was just like, you get something, once it's in your hands, you end it, and then you move on.
Yeah.
I did give it like I forget what the cleave is from. I forget what ability it's from.
It's from I forget as well. It's
Executioner, maybe?
Yes, Executioner.
So yeah, like it's slightly different, but the base function of grab, stab, move is the same.
Crab stab move slash friends slash their friends, not your friends. Not yet anyway.
Not high enough level for that.
Obviously, Sekhmet Chan's not uninstalled yet, so we cannot pay tribute in blood.
Not yet. Although it would be interesting to make license level 3 versions of these characters, because I was trying to focus on the frame itself and see what the strength of the frame was.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's cool to showcase to your, like, maybe like after the stream and after the introduction, to be like, well, this is what the game looks like as you progress, right? It's like, you know, all of a sudden, like, license level 3, you get like the big guns where like you double down on whatever your mech is good at, or like all of a sudden you get this giant fucking cannon, like, you know what I mean, like that kind of stuff. Kind of showing you that, you know, license level 3 is really kind of like you're going into the extremes of what your mech potential could be. I think most license level 3s are like, you know, well it's like an exponential growth of power, I guess.
Yes, yeah, especially once you get the NHPs involved.
Yeah, and I like that the way that you structured like the notes, where like you say like, you know, Hercules is an effective grappler and has like several dependable weapons. So it's like, you know, you're saying that like, you know, even like as you're using them, like you have the reliable damage because of like, you know, like the chainsaw and stuff like that, and like, you know, the idea of like you can grapple and ram larger targets, so like, don't be afraid to like go in deep on anything, right? Everything is viable.
Yes.
Like, you know, and the idea of like, you know, Helens can like shred and like wreck armor and like, you know, even deal with multiple enemies at once. So it really does match the whole feel of like a, you know, a Terminator style mech just kind of running in there and wrecking shit.
Basically. Like, I didn't want to put too much game terms in the notes on how to use the mech. Because I think I wanted to save that for like actually explaining how the game works. I just wanted to take like this very top level, very separated from the mechanics of the game. Like, here's what you'll probably do. You're gonna be able to grapple targets that are larger than you, and you're gonna be harder to knock back down if someone tries to do that to you. So
yeah, and you could explain that in the game, or like, you know, as like the roster solidifies, like you can then tell like your players like, oh yeah, by the way, like these are what the terms on your sheet means, right? You know, slowly drip feeding them information like that, so like they're not like overwhelmed. So at least like on their turn, they have an idea of what the outcome of the actions are going to be, right? Like what's safe, what's not safe, what are you good at, what are you not good at, like, you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Something I'm debating is, once I know what everyone wants to play, is going back and making like more like fully detailed notes of all the terms that are related to like the parts of their mech and stuff.
Yeah, you could do like a terms sheet of like specific notes that actually are on there, right? Like, you know, like the reliable damage, or what is grapple, or like, you know, what is threat, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because there's something. Yeah, like it depends on what's important to them. Like, I feel like if someone's playing the Blackbeard character, they're gonna want to know what grapple and ram means. But if someone playing like something that flies or something that hacks, they don't necessarily need to know the specifics of grapple. Like, it can come up for them if it does come up, but for them I would make notes of like, I don't know, maybe here's how hacking works, or here's what like explosive damage is like, or burst area effects, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's good too, because like, you know, if everybody knows a little bit part of the game, if someone has a question, you don't have to be the one to answer it, right? Like if like maybe the Blackbeard player can explain grapple to like the Goblin player as like, you know, they sob.
Yep.
That kind of deal.
Yeah, that is another thing, is like difficulty. That's something that I'm not really sure how you deal with when you're making pre-gen characters, especially in a game like this. Like, some games, I guess, you can get a better sense of what's hard and harder and what's easy. Like, games like Pathfinder that have like your martial classes, they're just, you swing a big stick and you make pain happen. That's pretty straightforward. I think you have more complex classes that are like, you have to manage certain spells and things like that. But if you're making a pre-gen character, it's a little easier to deal with because you just come in with like a pre-made spell sheet or whatever. For some things here, I'm wondering, like, especially one of them. So I have this pair called Emperor and Empress, who are mostly like fire and heat based. And Empress is the one that like will run hot, and then take advantage of that to do damage and have different effects and things like that. And I'm wondering, like, is it a complex build to deal with, or is it just like a matter of knowing what your resources are?
I mean, you could put difficulty too. That might be something that you can add. Like, how hard is this mech to actually run, right? Or, I mean, that could be for any game, right? It's like, how complicated is this to use, right? Like a fighter, like in Pathfinder 2, a fighter is way less complicated than a druid, period. Just because of the amount of options that player, like that fighter player, has versus like the druid, right? That kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like you know, it's like 80% of the time you move up and spam the attack button
Basically.
until the thing is dead, right? Maybe use power attack or whatever cool move you picked up from like your first feat, and if not, then like, you know, you just keep spamming it until the thing is dead and move on to the next thing, you know.
Yeah, it's just hard to gauge what that would be, because I don't know, other than maybe that one and like all of the Horus mechs, I don't know what is like specifically difficult, and if there's something that I think is easy, but maybe that's just because I've been around it a bit. I don't know. That's why I kind of left it open.
Yeah, well, I think like if you could preference, like if a player does like choose not the Blackbeard or any other mech that's just slap man, you can just maybe send a note to that player, be like, hey, by the way, this mech doesn't really do damage, but it definitely does mess up systems and stuff like that, or does really control space very well. And I think you already said that in the description, right? Because like, you know, I mean, we could like, you could put like, if you want to put more detail, you could go ahead and put more detail. You could be like how much heat damage does this do? Like, does this do raw damage to like a player? Like, is there like anti-armor options, or like, is this very defensive? Like, you could have like a whole like, you know, pentagon spread of like what this thing is good at, right? Give it 5 stars or whatever. Like, what's its combat rating or anything like that.
Yeah, give it like a whole stat score screen and everything. I mean, that's something I could do in like the personal notes once I know what everyone wants to play. I could definitely think of that.
And like honestly, like I mean, you can prepare as much as you can, but you know, having a bunch of fresh players in a fresh game, like mistakes are just going to be made, and people are just going to get stuffed. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I'm not expecting everything to be like super perfect. Again, because it's probably gonna be the first time I'm running the game on stream. But yeah, I'm just trying to like, I want to make everything as smooth as possible. Which is another thing that I'm struggling with, because I've gone back and revised like everything in my game like a bunch of times. I revised like the entire story like, I don't know, this morning. So
you probably revise it one more time like right before the stream starts.
I will. It's just because I'm trying to hammer down, like, I want this to be, I feel like the setting is interesting, and I'm kind of banking on my improv skills to make the characters interesting as well.
I'm sure they'll be fine. There'll probably be like a bunch of, you know, Jersey, Brooklyn accents.
No.
Like East Coast accents.
Not again. No, it'll all be cowboy accents this time.
Yeah. I think that actually the only mech that might be a little complicated to play is like Starling, because that's the Horus Hydra mech. I find that like having to remember a bunch of things that aren't you and position them properly does take a little bit of brain space, and it's a little bit harder. Yeah.
I'm hoping Foundry helps with that, because Foundry, like, it has the tokens all labeled and everything. So Foundry will say, hey, this is this person's drone or turret or whatever. So I'm hoping that helps. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, all the Horus ones were probably more complex.
Yeah. But if I think the Gremlin's actually the most straightforward of it is kind of. It's just like, I mean, they do have weird abilities, but also you're just like good at hacking. So like, even if you just like base level invade somebody, you know, you're doing your job.
Fair. But like, I also have to make sure I explain, hey, here's what invade means.
Invade is actually kind of a hard mechanic to understand, right? Because it breaks a lot of the action economy, because you can invade more than once, but you have to have different options at every, like, license level of invade gives you like 2 options of what's going on in it, right? Like, maybe not. How do they actually, wait, does the Goblin have invade? I'm trying to remember, or did they have systems? Yeah, because they just have, like, what's the difference between like an invade and like what is a quick tech, right? Or like how, like, Horus OS systems #1 gives you puppet systems and eject power cores, but like, wait, can you use like puppet systems and eject power cores in the same thing because it's coming from the same system? I don't think so. I think it's because it's like, you only can use one system at a time, so you have to choose if you either want to do puppet systems or eject power core. You can't do both.
That's
because
something I'm gonna have to know.
Yeah, right. That's something you're gonna have to explain to your players. It's like, well, and then it's like, if the system gets damaged, then you just can't use it. I think that's kind of weird. It's hard to explain that, like, these programs are actual physical parts on your mech. That's another thing you gotta like download your players, that like your mech is just like, it's a bunch of antennas.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that the token is like that as well. But that's another thing, is like I have to make sure I explain like damage, because Lancer is the way it functions in damage. It's like you can run out of HP multiple times.
Yeah, right. And like the idea that you're piloting basically a 2-legged tank, right? You can blow off bits and pieces and still drive that thing into someone's face. Like,
yeah. So that's another. I don't know. It's hard to figure out like the specific stuff that I should put in front of people and what I can just explain as or if it comes up. Especially with like what NPCs I want to make as well, because as I'm trying to form these encounters, it's like I need something memorable but not too difficult.
That's true. I mean, the classic like grunt assault is my favorite, and obviously the strongest. Because I don't know what anyone tells you, having 4 assault dudes just shoot assault rifles at you, who cares if they miss? That's like 8 damage or something stupid like that, because of the reliable. I guess if you have armor, it doesn't matter, but still, it's like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, like it depends. Yeah. Like I want to, maybe I can start off with just throwing a whole bunch of basic dudes at them for them to blow up and get used to their abilities, and then like, because we did something similar to this when we were talking with Shaka. Like as we were laying out combat, it's like start with some basic guys, then bring in some actual dangerous enemies, and then finish off with something pretty big. Like, I don't know if I could throw an ultra at like new players, but I'll have enough players for it, so I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you could throw an ultra at new players. They're license level 2, so yeah. I mean, they're halfway to being the max of that, or more than halfway to being the max of that kind of stretch of Lancer. So
yeah, but it's a thing of like, they like on a rules level they can technically handle it, but will it be complicated for new players? I don't know.
I mean, I don't think so, because the Lancer, like, it basically is like the ultras in Lancer are like, oh, this thing has, 4 structure like you guys, right? This is basically something more on your level, like on equal terms. And the fact that it gets to go twice and just has abilities, just say like you just miss or something like that, I think would be pretty cool for the players to experience, like, a really tough enemy. Because, obviously, like, again, kind of going back to that talk we had with Shaka, was like, first you throw a wave of trash at them, and then maybe some more elite stuff, and now it's just, your group versus one guy kind of deal.
Yeah. Like, I definitely, like, I have a sense of what I want that last one to be. I want it to be, like, a big, memorable enemy. I just hope that players find it interesting and fun to fight. There's also the matter of something you've mentioned a bunch of times, of people not using the core power on their mech.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like, your mech's big final move or whatever, the really cool thing your mech can do. And people being hesitant to use it.
Yeah, like, when the stupid anime soundtrack kicks in, like the opening theme, and then you're like, yeah. Yeah, I don't know why players don't just do it. I honestly think that if you just use, unless there's like, a better combination of like, I use my core power to pull everybody in and you use your core power to blow everybody up kind of deal, right? Like, unless there's some kind of interaction there or there's a specific enemy that you want to use your core power on, but like, you never actually know what you're going to fight or what situation will call for it. I find that like, generally for the structure of a mission, it's like, there's like 4 combats, right? And people want to like hold off their superpower for the boss, but then it's like sometimes your core power is like more suited to dealing with a bunch of chaff versus like, defeating one very powerful enemy, right? But that's just me. I always want to be flashy and the cool person in the moment and take up a lot of screen time. So if I pop my core power, then it's all my screen time, baby.
Yeah, you got me watching Gurren Lagann. I'm only like a few episodes in. And I was like, why didn't I watch this before Evangelion? But you mentioned Kamina was your favorite character, and I was like, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, Kamina is the best and is basically all of my Lancer characters ever. I don't think... I'm pretty sure that every single Duke is just Kamina, and he will never die. So many. Yeah, that just explains why there's so many. Kamina forever. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I mean, that's definitely another thing that I'm doing is like I'm trying to get back into watching more mech stuff. I fell off a bit. Like that was the purpose of me watching Evangelion, is I wanted to watch more mech anime to hopefully get some inspiration for like scenes and things like that. I don't know how much Gurren Lagann's gonna help because I'm just enjoying it too much to be like, what's the thing I can steal here? I'm just having too much fun.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. But you're so very barely in the ocean that is Gurren Lagann.
Oh no, like 100%. Yeah.
I'm very excited for you to come talk to me like in a couple weeks from now when you're actually finished it and be like, what the hell was that?
But in a good way.
In a good way. It's like the opposite of Evangelion, where it starts off kind of cool and then it gets kind of shitty. But this one is it starts off kind of cool and then it ends amazingly, and you're like, why does anyone ever create anything else when Gurren exists? I don't know. Like, I don't want to say it like cures depression, but I'm pretty sure
it just might.
It's helping. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, what else can we say? Like when you like work on combats, like how do you, I mean, I don't know, like that's another thing. It's like, how do I make this interesting but like a challenge as well? I don't know if you still think about that or have to like ride that line, because for the most part you play with more experienced people in pretty much every game.
That's true. Of course, like I have to, because I think that like some mechs are just kind of built different. Like honestly, the Barbossa is kind of like my my sore spot dealing with a Barbossa player, only because they're typically in the back. I'm typically not paying attention to them, and then all of a sudden they just blow me up, and I'm like, what? And then I finally get to them. Yeah, right. Like, oh yeah, you're still here. I forgot, because all of your friends are dying, and you're just like laughing maniacally because Steven's a jerk like that. But Barbossa's hard because it has a lot of armor. It's really slow, and the unless you're playing a mission where it's like the players have to get somewhere, then you don't really notice the slowness, right?
Yeah.
So like you're, as a GM, you're like trying to cap the objectives, or you're trying to stop the players from doing whatever. You're setting up all your stuff, you're dealing with the players, and all of a sudden the Barbossa's turn come along, and you're like, oh shit, I'm still like 20 spaces away from this fucking thing, and it could just shoot me and destroy me. Right? Like, and then it's like, how do I go and challenge that player, right? Do I just ignore everybody else and then rush in? But then sure, I'm beating up a Barbossa who has like 26 HP and like 3 armor, like whatever. Like, and the player has the luck of a god and can never be hacked for some reason.
Yeah, just incredible.
I don't know. just incredible. Just living up to the name of Magenta Orangutan. You go watch those streams, by the way, and you can see how Steven plays this legendary character that just only rolls good numbers.
Yeah, among the links below, you can find that.
Yeah. But yeah, most times it's other than like, dealing with players like in the back and stuff like that. You could just have like reinforcements come in, or like, really going hard. Like another thing that you could do, like obviously as a GM, you have perfect knowledge of like, the player team, and like let's say a good example would be like for my Wallflower game that I ran in, at the end of the game we were all piloting SSC mechs somehow. Like it wasn't like one of my characters died and another player's character died and we were playing other mechs, but it just so happens we're like, oh yeah, we'll make this other character, right? And then we both chose SSC mechs, and the surviving characters also had SSC mechs, and we all just made the conclusion separately. So we're all running around with like Formula One sports cars that like as soon as you hit a rock will just explode.
Yeah.
and it was like one of the most stressful swingy situations like ever. Like when someone gets hit, it's hard and it hurts. But you can, if everyone's playing big chunky dudes with big chunky health, bars, then just all of a sudden with like very little heat caps, you're like, oh cool, here's like 3 witches. I'm like, good luck. Like,
yeah,
here's a good example of a challenge that is like on paper it's like, yeah, this will be fine, but like in reality it's like, no, they're gonna win, but they're gonna be like wrecked, right? Like really wrecked and really hurt and possibly lose a mech, stuff like that. Especially in fights, like I think in Lancer it's like really easy to bully one person, and going one, like you just choose the person who's gonna move forward and be like, okay, everybody just attack that guy, and like because of the whole system where like you're losing structure, you're losing reactor, you start getting a bunch of negatives, you're getting impaired, like sometimes you get like your systems break. Like you can bully a player to be like not like functional anymore, really, right? Not being a threat, and move on to somebody else, like maybe within 2 turns of firing, right? And depending how long your game is, it's like and that's only fun for everybody else who isn't getting shat on, right? So that kind of deal.
Yeah. I mean, I also got to think about like time limit as well, because it's gonna be 2-3 hour streams. So it's like, can I do 2 combats a stream? I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. Maybe if I don't prepare 2 combats a stream, then am I gonna run out of content? I don't know.
I don't know. It depends on like. I think the first combat will probably be your longest combat, because people are double checking what they can do, people are a little hesitant, and possibly your last combat will be long because it's like the finale. Typically those run a little longer, or like like Shaka said before, your players could just stuff your bad guy that you spent months figuring out in like 1 turn, and then it's like, I guess you guys win.
They could all save their core powers for the final battle. If they're all useful against one big enemy.
Yeah, like like one right after the other, which I mean, that would still be pretty epic, I think. But then your bad guy doesn't get to monologue and taunt your players, and it's like it's the players are like, yeah, high five, and you're like, well, that could have
it.
Damn you players!
I need a good monologue. It's been a while since I got a good monologue, and I gotta look down on all my players and call them all foolish mortal scum and stuff. Classic bad guy stuff.
Yeah, right before you get sent to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah. Of course. But yeah, I think I'm gonna enjoy the game. I'm just like, last minute stress. Apparently that's the only way my brain works, is if I do everything like the day before.
It's hard to get those ideas, especially when you have like time to think. You're like, oh, I can think about this later. But when you have like the pressure, it's like, oh, now the real juice comes out.
That's honestly how I made all of their bios. Like, because they were just like 1 or 2 sentences before, and then it was like, oh man, I'm running the game in like 2 weeks. I better get ready. Yeah, I think I'll put a link to it in the description if people want to check it out. It's not I don't know. It's not they're not all like perfect probably. But I think they might be interesting enough as a basis to start with.
Yeah, and I don't think like it's supposed to be optimized, right? The idea is to showcase like a play style, not to showcase this is the pinnacle of license level 2 with this, you know, frame, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want people to look at it and think, why didn't you make this better? It's like, I think the characters are interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, they're kind of cool and fun. Look, they can dance.
They can dance, they can sing. Yeah, I'll put it below. I'll also put a link to where I got the sci-fi profile pictures, because those are really good looking, and they really, like, I think art is a very important thing. Like, in all our discussions we've had previously, like a lot of them we've had previously, we mentioned a lot of how art helps onboard people into something. Like, I can describe how a thing functions, but if you don't see, like, that it's this big chunky mech, or it has, like, a flamethrower, or it's got, like, this sword, it's a bit harder to understand, like, the importance of it. Even something as simple as, like, a little bit of eye glow.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, like, I love the portraits. I think they match up with the, you know, the mech and the feel, like how, like, even like their attitude, like in the portrait, like how one would be like, you know, surprised, or like one would be like stoic, the other person would be like eager, that kind of deal, to really kind of sell like the idea of what it would feel like to be in their shoes, like to don that character.
Yeah, for sure. Like, some of them, like, I had to change up a bit, like Longhorn. I guess because I'm linking this, people will see. One of them is just going to be based on, like, that cool cowboy type. He was going to be a ripoff of Whole Horse from JoJo. But I didn't see an image that really fit that for me. But I did see this one more, like, likable looking guy who might fit with this type of mech. And I was like, well, let me just change up this character a bit. And now it makes more sense. And I think he's pretty cool. He still has the cape, though. Because I guess cowboys have capes.
Well, I mean, the whole Desperado thing.
Yeah.
You know, capes on mechs, right? It's just super cool factor, nothing else. Just having a cape on a robot, you can still see it. Like, what do you what do you mean?
It's cool. Yeah, if this turns out well, at least if the game turns out well, I think I'm gonna try making some other builds. Like, again, with these, I was just focusing on, like, core stuff exclusively, but I have a bunch of LCP files from, like, all the people we've talked to. So that was something I also wanted to do, is, like, I want to use these things, but it's like, I really want to focus on the core game, but I know there's a whole bunch of cool stuff here that I would love to do.
I mean, it'd be pretty cool if you made a bunch of pre-gen characters with using, like, the, you know, the homebrew supplements, the field guides that we've from all of our guests. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool to, like, show, like, oh, cool, look at this cool mech from here and this cool person. Maybe you could, like, add a little backstory from, like, their setting, so, you know, it's like whenever you're gonna run Lancer again, so hopefully you can run more games of Lancer for me, because I'm greedy.
Yeah, maybe on our channel or something, or if they let me run another one, if they don't hate me afterwards.
Calvin, you wasted our time. 2 weeks of our life to play this shitty ass game. No, it'll be fine. Like,
Mission failed.
Mission failed. No way, man. Lancer's a fun game, and it's really hard not to have fun in this game. Like, this game is cool.
I certainly hope so. But I think we can start maybe wrapping things up a bit. It's another bit of a shorter one. But I gotta get to writing some stuff. I also have a stream today, and I probably shouldn't do a long recording and a stream on the same days anyway.
All right, cool. Yeah, just do the wrap up.
Definitely go check out the links below. So I will link to just the basics of the pilot bios page. Yeah, if people want to see it, I'll just link it below. It'll probably be updated at some point in the future, but I'll see what I do want to do with that. If you just want to see, like, the kind of things that I made to onboard people on. Again, I just took, like, the core game stuff. I tried to make three mechs from each manufacturer, just to show off the different manufacturers. They're not really balanced in terms of like, I don't think they're balanced in terms of like type, because I wasn't really focusing on that, just the manufacturers themselves. So when you come in, and if I have updated them as to what type they are, like controller or whatever, might not be fully balanced, but that's probably going to be okay. And I'll also link to where I got the profile pictures from, if you want to check that out, because I think the art is really good, and you can really get a lot of use out of it for your Lancer games, because there's like 100+ pictures in there. Some really weird ones too. So yeah, definitely check those out. I also want to make sure we give a shout out to, I just saw this last night, that Vex added a new chapter to In Golden Flame.
Nice.
The 4th chapter. So definitely go check it out. We talked to her a while back about this game, this campaign series. We talked about Jerry a bunch. Jerry, our favorite overworked and underappreciated character in Lancer. So be sure to go check out that episode, and be sure to check out that link, as well as all the other links for things that we have below, all these awesome people that we talked to. And I also have to make sure I give a shout out to the Untold Stories Project channel. That is where I'm going to be running this Lancer game. We're officially announcing it, well, day of recording, we're announcing it tomorrow, so by the time this comes out, it will have been announced. But I'm running it on April 20th and 27th. So I would appreciate people coming out to watch it. But I won't look at the numbers because that'll scare me.
I think you'll be fine. It's fun. It's just Lancers. Make a bunch of Brooklyn accents and pew pew lasers, and you're done.
I'm shooting lasers over here. No, I'm gonna work on my cowboy accent.
I think that would work really well. Actually, it'd be really funny. Just have like this 1920s Brooklyn gangster voice, and you're just like, "Yeah, take my bullets and my lasers." Like,
just go really like, "Man, I'm firing a laser. See? Man."
Yeah. You're like the penguin from Batman.
You won't escape this laser, Batman.
Everybody would die, and just to show you how fun Lancer could be, you can have the penguin shooting lasers at Batman in mechs.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will make notes of what voices I can conceivably do. If you've seen me play Outer Worlds, anybody's watched the stream, you've seen me slip into my cowboy voice and then struggle with turning it off, so maybe I'll use it for good this time. But yeah, definitely go check out USP streaming. It'll be at 7 p.m. EST on April 20th and 27th. So yeah, please check that out. As well as I'm over on there every Monday playing Mutants and Masterminds in their regular Guardians of Haven game. It's based on the Star Haven setting that they've been talking about a whole lot over on their own social media stuff. I've been having a lot of fun with that game, although I do have to point out, so I'm playing with my character is a twin, and my character's sister is one of the other players. I do have to point out that, like the first session, my twin almost died, and the second session, I almost died. So, I don't know. No, wait, it was, other way around. First session, I almost died, and then after that, my twin almost died. So I don't know what's up with that. I don't know what the deal with that is, but if you want to come by and see if the other characters almost die, or if it'll just be us and just be super embarrassing.
You guys won't be twins anymore.
No. I mean, to be fair, I'm pretty fragile. We were fighting these acid monsters, and they came up from underground, and then they grab you and drag you back down, and then you're like underground and being digested. So it was not a pleasant time. But yeah, definitely go check those out. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and Alex, he likes to put in these little plot twists, and plot got pretty twisty pretty fast. It's not like last time where it was like it snuck up on you. It was like, boom, here's the plot. So yeah, go check that out. What else do we have to say other than just go check out all our awesome people and our streams? Check out my gaming streams, because those are really fun too. Started playing Mass Effect. Mass
Effect 2, my favorite Mass Effect, and I'm actually, it was very was very excited that you you found Garrus. Like, it was like the funniest build up.
Oh
You
my
actually had no
God.
clue that it was Garrus, but like I knew the entire time, and I was like, oh man, it's your boy Garrus. Like
that might be one of the highlights, because if you've seen the first one, you know how much I love Garrus, and then as we're dealing with, I mean, people know the plot of Mass Effect 2. I can. Well, I didn't know, so maybe I won't spoil it, but I was really excited when I found Garrus again. I'll just say that.
yeah, it's very funny because like you actually had no clue that it was, and it like transported me back to like the first time I played, and I was like, oh my god, it's Garrus. Like,
so yeah, for sure,
my man.
go check that out. Gosh, that was really fun. That was a highlight of the game for me. And yeah, I think that's all the stuff we've got going on right now. I mean, we have other stuff on here, but I'm sure you're all checking out everything. All right, Ramon, anything else you want to say to our lovely listeners before we head off?
No, let's give them the outro. The out sign, or whatever you say.
The outside. All right, well, everybody out there, thanks a ton for listening. Thanks a ton for 300 plus subscribers, which is wacky. And everybody out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.